Wow, day one in St. Petersburg. It truly feels like a dream. I can't believe I am actually here. It's one place I've wanted to visit, but actually didn't think it would be a reality. So, day one, we were all still exhausted from the late night. We had to get up early and we all went and ate breakfast. Breakfast at the hotel was 25 euros. They were very slow and I was just not very impressed, which is one reason I would not stay at that hotel again, just the way that they treated us and all of that with the breakfast and being very slow. So we met our tour guide, I think around 9:30 and got started around 10ish. Our first stop of the day was Peter&Paul Fortress, which was one of my favorite places that we visited. It was like reliving history in middle school. I didn't realize how much history was in St. Petersburg. I think that's why I truly enjoy this trip, because I am a history buff. To give a little history about Peter&Paul Fortress. The history of Peter&Paul Fortress dates back to the 17th century when the Russian lands along the Baltic Sea were accompanied by Sweden. After this Russian became landlocked in 1700, Russian Tsar Peter I started the war against the Sweden known as the Great Northern War, which lasted until 1721. In 1703, after the first important victory, he decided to found a fortress in order to strengthen the control of the territory. Next to Peter the Great were buried his second wife Catherine I and their daughter Elizabeth, who ruled the country for 20 years. Catherine is buried in the same section. In the second row, German princess, she came to Russia when she was 16 and when her husband became the Tsar. She dethroned him and ruled the country for the next 34 years. All Russian monarchs since Peter I till Nicholas II were buried inside the cathedral except for Peter II, who is buried in Moscow. The tombs that you see here inside the church are actually just the catacombs. The actual bodies are actually buried underneath in a basement, underneath the catacombs. Today, the Peter&Paul Fortress is the main branch of the State Museum and History of St. Petersburg. Most of the old structures in the fortress have been preserved. The Peter&Paul Cathedral is the oldest church in the city and the tallest building of downtown. It was founded in 1712 when St. Petersburg became the capital of Russia. It looks like a triumph arch. The cathedral was a symbol of the victory over Sweden. 50 tombs of the Russian rulers and Romanian family members are inside St. Peter and St. Paul Church itself. A special burial vault next door has 17 tombs of Grand Dukes, the Tsar's closest relatives. 19 fortress commandants had the honor of being buried by the side of the imperial family vault at the wall of the church. Most of the history in St. Petersburg is surrounded by Peter the Great and Catherine. Most of the museums and exhibits that we visited, you hear talk of Peter and Catherine. The most feared prison, the fortress was constructed with a military purpose but soon was converted into a political prison. It had gained a reputation as one of the most feared prisons in the Russian Empire. Among the most famous prisoners were the son of Peter the Great, suspected of disloyalty, dissemblance conspirators involved in the uprising of December 14, 1825, writer Vander Dostoevsky for publishing revolutionary articles. Lenin's elder brother, Alexander Yulianov, Josip Broz Tito, the communist leader of Yugoslavia, Maxim Gorky, well-known Soviet writer. In 1918, the prison was closed by the Bolsheviks and converted it to the Museum and Revolution in City's History. After a brief city tour, as we did starting and in between getting to our destinations, the next stop was St. Isaac's Cathedral. The cathedral has 3 altars. The central one is dedicated to St. Isaac of Dalmatia. The left side altar is dedicated to St. Alexander Nevsky, and one on the right is dedicated to St. Catherine. The icon of Our Lady of Tikhvin is one of cathedral's most revered treasures. With a height of almost 330 feet, St. Isaac's Cathedral is the city's second tallest building after the Peter&Paul Cathedral. There is access to the colonnade and observation deck, one of the most visited tourist attractions. Decorations of the cathedral's interior required 900 pounds of gold, 16 tons of malachite, 1,100 pounds of lavia lazuli, and 1,000 tons of bronze. The cathedral is decorated with large statues of angels, evangelists, and apostles. There are 24 sculptures of angels and archangels just on the balustrade of the main dome. Next up is the Church of Savior on Spilled Blood. It's one of the main sites of St. Petersburg. When you hear St. Petersburg, that's what I always picture seeing. The church was built on the site where Tsar Alexander II was assassinated and was dedicated in his memory. Construction began in 1883 under Alexander III as a memorial to his father, Alexander II. Work progressed slowly and was finally completed during the reign of Nicholas II in 1907. The church contains over 7,500 square meters of mosaics, according to its restorers, more than any other church in the world. Up after our tours was a late lunch to Demendorf. Of course, it's Europe, so lunch is later. I think we didn't get here until about 3 o'clock. So we did have a 4-course meal. We started with soup and then salad, and main dish was kind of like a creamy chicken kind of with rice. It was really, really good. And then a crepe for dessert. It was all very good. So that was one of the traditional Russian restaurants locally there. Then after that, I believe we went and hit up a souvenir store that was local. So after lunch and then the visit to the gift store, we went back to the hotel after a much needed rest. I had a client I was supposed to meet up with who lived in St. Petersburg. Little did I know I did not have any phone service. I thought Russia was covered. I'm with AT&T, and I got hit up right after I got there with quite a bit of charge. So I had to shut my phone off, and I had no way to get a hold of my client. Apparently she had tried to call the hotel, but did the hotel tell me that she called? No, they didn't. So that was another reason I was not too happy with them, because I did not get my message. So I'm still disappointed to this day and feel bad I did not get to meet up with her. However, good news is me and my family booked a cruise for summer 2020, and I am hopefully will be able to meet up with her then. Thanks for watching, and be sure to subscribe below.